And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Today, we're back on a Tuesday, folks. Here we go. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We are live in the 702 iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are where you can like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all latest notifications to keep you up to date. Thanks for making us a part of your day as well. We greatly appreciate all of you. We've got quite the show today. Here in just about, a few minutes, about just close to about 15, 20 minutes. Robert Lyle of Between the Lines podcast is going to be joining us, and a good fellow of ours on the Sports Wave Network. As you already know, proud home for the Snake Sports Talk Show. Super excited for the growth of this network itself, and so glad for all of you guys to be joining in. Unfortunately, Taylor out today, but no worries. Definitely come in, hang out with me, and enjoy the show here today. So, first of all, I'm going to start it off with this. So this weekend, as I've said, it was kind of brutal for prime predictions. Obviously, Taylor and I, we both ended up hitting a wall a little bit this past week. Week 2, as you know, it's kind of filled. I thought there was going to be a bunch of dogs that were going to be barking this whole weekend. But unfortunately, I was wrong. I paid the price, ended up going 6-8. Taylor went 7-7. But a lot of these picks, it really did kind of show up for what this is. So, first of all, over the weekend, what I've noticed that I think is great, that kind of puts all of the NFL, all the teams on notice, is that there are 2 teams in this league. Doesn't matter the conference, AFC, NFC. But there are 2 teams in this league that just shows you what truthfully the NFL is supposed to look like. So let me start off with the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan is by far one of the most innovative, creative, offensive-minded head coaches that we've had in this league. And he's been around for a while and a long time. We know a lot of people are kind of like, well, remember the time when he started his head coaching career and he wasn't really winning games without Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, yeah, that's true. But then eventually he started to settle in on his own. Kyle Shanahan is the reason Washington made the huge mistake letting go of him and Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur. Look at what all 3 of their track records are. You have 2 coaches that are by far excellent on offense. Then you have a third one with Matt LaFleur as he's thriving in Green Bay. That's with Aaron Rodgers, and that's with Jordan Love. So all 3 offensive-minded coaches. Don't you wish that Washington never gave up and never fired those coaches? I certainly wouldn't have. But the biggest deal that you can make if you are any coach in this league, you have to be adaptable in this league. That's what Kyle Shanahan is. He's adaptable. So in his tenure with Washington, he's had several quarterbacks that have come and gone, but has been very creative as an offensive coordinator. Then eventually goes to the Atlanta Falcons as an offensive coordinator. And what does he do the year that he's there? He reshapes Matt Ryan into being an MVP. Eventually gets the Falcons to the Super Bowl because they were so creative on offense, and it was difficult in the NFC to really stop a powerhouse like them. But then eventually they met the Patriots, they met Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and then ended up losing. You know what the history was. I ain't going to repeat exactly the score. Everybody knows. It was blown out of proportion out of all over the internet. So basically, Kyle Shanahan takes the head coaching job in San Francisco, and by far the first few times was not as successful until Jimmy Garoppolo arrived. He had a couple of quarterbacks that he had to utilize that at the very least San Francisco could use until they found their quarterback. Once Jimmy Garoppolo came into the building, 8-0 as a starter when he first got traded from New England to San Francisco, it was way over the rails after that. Then eventually, they got through Jimmy G. They then ended up trading up picks to go and get Trey Lance. And then eventually, they then struck gold the second they ended up getting Brock Purdy. And this is a 7th-round quarterback out of Iowa State who spent all 4 years in college and was by far exceptional. And all he had to do was distribute the football and basically play the task that Kyle Shanahan bestowed upon him. Plus, he's also been very trustworthy when it came to defensive coordinators. So San Francisco, to be on the hot streak that they are in, we know it's 2 weeks, but I'm watching how innovative and yet creative this offense is. It is by far unstoppable. Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. This is what the NFL was meant to look like. It was meant to look like this. Creative on offense, trustworthy on defense, and they have a stacked roster of future Hall of Famers. And that's exactly with what the DNA that the 49ers are. And that's why, again, I love the Eagles, but the Eagles kind of feel like their offense is taking a slight step back. It's not the same with Shane Steichen. But both the Eagles and the Niners both have an identity that makes them so unstoppable in the NFC, which is why that I think it'll come back down to the wire again in the championship between both these teams. Then let's look at the AFC, and probably one of the most high-powering offenses that we've seen right now in the AFC is the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel comes from a tree from Kyle Shanahan. Innovative on offense. Trusts Tua, which people were ready to write off Tua that easily. So by that point, the Miami Dolphins, they were already making phone calls to potentially getting, Deshaun Watson or several other quarterbacks because they were afraid that Tua was going to end up being hurt. So eventually, they then ended up rolling the dice. They trust Tua. And then what do they give him? They give him Jalen Waddle. They give him Tyreek Hill. They give him at least speedy offense that knows that they can get open, and they're very creative in doing so. The first 2 weeks, they've already scored up over to 60 points. And that's how Mike McDaniel runs that offense. Don't you see how clear-coded that the offense literally looks like? Looks a lot like Kyle Shanahan, which is exactly why both these teams are literally the best teams that I have seen right now in the NFL. And the one thing that both of them have in common, creative on offense, trustworthy quarterbacks to distribute the football, Tua and Brock Purdy, trustworthy defensive coaches who know how to play situational football. That's Steve Wilks, and that's also Vic Fangio. This is all San Francisco's doing. Their identities and their fingerprints are written all over it. Mike McDaniel, it's like it's identical for both of these coaches. So you have one that's very fast and is very innovative, and you have another one who is so creative that the playbook is just unlimited with him. And you've got trustworthy defensive coaches. I think, honestly, when you look at the NFL and what it's deemed to be, these two teams are exactly what the NFL has been pushing for. Pro offense, trustworthy defenses, great coaching schematics and situations. Plus, you have trustworthy quarterbacks, not named Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, but they distribute the football so good. I mean, look at the MVP races. They've already unanimously looked at Tua as the MVP of the league. Now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I'm literally looking at creativity at its finest. And I think we're seeing that with both these offenses after this weekend. Both of them know exactly how to score. Both of them know how to play shutdown defense and situational defense. And that's exactly with what you're trying to look for. All right. Let me just tell you what's not so creative that we're kind of already getting to the point of we're just kind of sick of it. So, um, here's what I look at. So, as I mentioned about both Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel, I utilize offensive coaches like this. Think of it this way. Okay. We live in a world where we have two different cell phones, Android and iPhone. What does the Android usually do? Okay. I kind of think of this as defensive minded coaches. What the Androids are willing to do, yes, they're able to, download at certain speeds. They're able to track phone calls whenever you need them. And they're also, very creative depending on, the types of Androids that you end up buying. They're not, it's not to particularly say that they can't do the job, but there are some certain limitations. Look at how many Androids that we've gone through. Look at how many galaxies that we have. We have literally 23, and I think we have like 24, if I'm not mistaken. It's like 6 months afterward, there's always a brand new Android. Where on the other side, you look at the Apple iPhone, which now they're getting ready to come out with an Apple iPhone 15. I have a 14 Pro. What are the pros that iPhone usually gives you? They give you faster speed. They give you so much quality and yet creativity, depending on what your line of work is. You reach phone calls very easily. You can also do FaceTimes and all the rest of them. And the nicest thing is that you're not going through 24, 25 different galaxies just in order to get the best one possible on the market. They're going into 15. All it really is it's just software updates. They're constantly getting creative. They are constantly adapting themselves. This is what I'm looking at when it comes to the NFL. Defensive-minded coaches literally act like androids, whereas offensive coaches, they act like iPhones. Because iPhones are constantly adapting. They're giving you better quality, consistent speed, and they're very creative. Right now, I'm looking at the LA Chargers, and you could just tell Brandon Staley is just an android. They talk all this great stuff. Oh, we got the new 24, we got the 25, and it's got all these creative stuff. I'm not seeing it. I've seen it on television. I'm watching it right in front of me. I'm not seeing any changes. I'm not seeing any creativity. For the Chargers, it's honestly time for Brandon Staley to go. Because at this point, and I was in this point in my life, I've been part of androids for, ever since I could even remember. I remember starting out, in my life when I was a teenager and I had a BlackBerry phone. Okay, just before I had the new Galaxy. And then eventually, when I started to kind of get a little bit more into quality productions, quality, consistent numbers, and of course, I need something that is right off the bat. Download speeds. That's when I ended up converting to iPhone. And iPhones become very trustworthy. They become very creative and innovative, and they give you exactly the consistency. Yes, you have to pay a price. Yes, there's certain things that it's just like, yeah, I don't agree with fully, but wouldn't you want the latest technology to at least get the job done? Wouldn't you want a creative yet game managing type of head coach? Look at Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, Brian Dable, Pete Carroll, Andy Reid, even Bill Belichick at the time when he had Tom Brady. These were game managers. Okay. We know that this league is pivoted to offense. But here's what I will tell you. In just about the span of 2 games, they have scored 50 points offensively with 0 turnovers. Okay. And that's also with Justin Herbert throwing over 500 yards. And on top of all of that, offensively, they were healthy. Obviously, Austin Eckler was out last week, but the offensive line was providing protection for Justin Herbert. But here's also what's the downside. Okay, so it's not the offense. It's not Kellen Moore, because Kellen Moore, you already know his imprints are already there. But the downside to this is that the defense has been ranked 4th worst scoring defense. They are the 6th worst rushing defense. And they've also been ranked 3rd worst in third down situations. They convert more 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s instead of being a shutdown defense. That's with a defensive coach. And your DC apparently was a defensive backs coach, and his DBs all got burnt in 2 weeks. J.C. Jackson looked lost. Asante Samuel Jr., he's not progressing. He's not even thriving and producing. Michael Davis is the only person that's literally carrying the defense right now. And then you've got linebackers. Even without Eric Kendricks, it looked mediocre, which is why that this is Kenneth Murray's last year. So, as I've said before, we have moved to an offensive-centric league. And what do all those offenses conduct of? They conduct of trustworthy defenses. And the Chargers are the ones that basically spent all this money up on defense, and they literally looked like trash. I mean, it's time to clean this mess up. Brandon Staley clearly is not the guy. You speak a big game, but you're not showing a big game. That's what's difficult. And I think for the Chargers, it's time for Dean Spanos to stop being cheap. That's what's hard about these types of owners. When owners get cheap, of course, the chances of winning a Super Bowl becomes far none. You got to pay a price. You had Brian Daboll and Sean Payton right in front of you. You whiffed on both of them. They obviously were not going to spend $15 million on a head coach for Sean Payton to basically coach up Justin Herbert, even though we loved the thought and we loved the vision, but it was never going to happen. And then eventually you had Brian Daboll, cheap, inexpensive, and you chose to go with Staley. This is not good. The Chargers being 0-2, while they've already scored 50 points, Justin Herbert's already got over 500 yards, no turnovers. And you're 0-2? That's unacceptable. Unacceptable. This don't change. And you're going on the road to Minnesota. If this doesn't end up changing from this next week and they go 0-3, I'd be throwing the pink slip right after that game. That's what I would be doing. All right, coming up next, Robert Lyle right up around the corner. We're going to end up taking a short break from here. When we do come back, by the way, 2 quarterbacks in the NFL that we already kind of look at that they are struggling. They are already getting into this point where they just cannot adapt to this league. They've been really good college quarterbacks, but up to this point, it has not looked good for either of them. And it looks really, really bad. I'll explain more of that coming up next here on the show. Alrighty, folks. So as I've talked about before, sales have been skyrocketing already since the sponsorship debuting of Muscle Tech. And as I've said before, Muscle Tech has you covered on everything you need to live your best fit and healthy lifestyle possible. Whether you've got goals you want to reach or you want to end up living your best fit and healthy life, you're getting ready for a competition, or you're trying to strive for that dream beach body you've always wanted. Well, Muscle Tech is there to help you. Packed with 100% natural proven ingredients, Muscle Tech is there to ensure you can get the best boost in the edge for you to live your best healthy and fit lifestyle possible. Go online to muscletech.com, and when you do, use promo code SNAKESPORTS at checkout and get 30% off of your products and your purchases. Just as a way of saying thank you for using Muscle Tech product. That's SNAKESPORTS as your promo code on muscletech.com. Muscletech.com, promo code SNAKESPORTS.
Bobby Montagna on the Beantown Breakdown, Saturdays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific on Sportswave Network.
Bo Crouch stars in Hawk Talk, Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern on Sportswave Network.
Robert Lyle hosts Between the Lines podcast, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show, with hundreds of events listed, live concerts, sporting events, and so much more. Go on to SeatGeek.com, enter promo code Snake Sports Talk Show, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase.
Key Williams and Dante Criswell star in 7200 Seconds podcast Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Welcome back here, folks. Snake Sports Talk Show. Jake the Snake joining you back here. Thanks for making us a part of your day. So we're going to get right up into it as, of course, my good friend and, of course, very knowledgeable when it comes to the baseball NFL world, and very, very excited and happy to have him a part of the Sports Wave Network. So joining me live here via the Global Satellite Network, I got Robert Lyle here with us on the show. All right. So, first of all, we're going to get into some NFL talk right as before we get into potentially baseball postseason. So I want to start with this because I opened up the show basically talking about we are witnessing two of the best teams in the NFL. That's the Niners and the Dolphins. I think the NFL, they were striving to have the kind of like identity that both these teams have with Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel. What have you noticed about both these teams that kind of seems so identical that this is exactly with what teams in the NFL are literally striving for?
Well, there's a lot of things. One thing in particular is the fact that, like I think you said it best, I mean, both coaches are innovative. And yes, I mean, you have Mike McDaniel, who I've been very impressed because when he first took the job, I said, okay, so it'll be a bit of an interesting change because the Dolphins, like I said, I was never a huge hater of the Dolphins because I do want to see the Dolphins be somewhat competitive because in a way I look like they're like the secondary laughing stock behind the New York Jets. And the problem is with Miami, I mean, right now it's Tua is the biggest question mark for me. But that being said, I think overall it's the creativity. It's like, I mean, with the 49ers, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. I mean, they'll use like deep, I mean, look, jeez. I mean, with Christian McCaffrey, I thought, let's be real, it's just a nasty running back. And also with the combination with Shanahan using Debo as well. See, and that's hard to stop. And also with let's be real, a top 2 defense in the league. I'll flat out admit it. As a long-time Eagles fan, I've never seen a solid defense that's the 49ers ever had with Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, just to really help out that front seven. And yeah, and Shanahan, in some eyes of a lot of 49ers fans, not to the chagrin, they kind of would, how do I say this? It's not really, they don't really trust him because it's always like, yeah, I mean, with the Niners, it's Super Bowl or bust. And, the thing is, I've heard from some Niners fans that the fact that if the Niners don't make it past or at least win the Super Bowl, I've heard they just say fire Shanahan. It's like, I'm thinking, it's like, no, that's not even because for like you have too much of a talented roster not to win the Super Bowl. So I think overall, I like what they have in the terms of the passing game. I mean, look, both pretty much all are. No, the only difference is Miami's defense. I still can't trust yet because I feel like their secondary still kind of is iffy. Front seven is fine. I think it's just the front. It's for me. It's the secondary that separates between the two for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And the fact of the matter is that, what I see what's so similar is that the fact that both these coaches, because they're offensive minded, both Shanahan and Mike McDaniel, what they hired is that they hired trustworthy DCs that they know how to play situationally. Vic Fangio has been well respected in the NFL as terms of being a defensive coordinator. We noticed his work in Chicago. We noticed his work, with the Denver Broncos, especially when it came to the secondary play and their front seven. And even when he comes into Miami. Once Jalen Ramsey, I think, comes back, it'll be completely different. The secondaries will be more shut down. I mean, I was very impressed with how they played against, New England. They come off a game where, it was very high scoring against the Chargers, but then eventually got shut down to where they limited 17 points of a Mac Jones and that New England offense. Now we know that it's not as creative. They try so many different pieces. But then you look at San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, and he's come off of several different defensive coordinators. Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, and now Steve Wilkes. It's like you're still seeing the same similar identity with these guys. And it's just like, this is kind of what the NFL is meant to be built, is that they feel like offensive coordinating coaches that their only thing is that they work on being an explosive offense, be very creative, and they hire the right guys with DCs as far as being shut down defenses, trustworthy to making sure that the offense is doing their job and being capable. Plus, they're being game managers. So it's like, this is kind of what, the NFL is literally trending towards, right?
I agree. It's like, and yes, I mean, even for me as an Eagles fan, like I'm still having to, look, I'm not really going to harp on Desai a little bit because Desai's has really done well, has done some really good work with the secondary. Now, yes, I mean, it was kind of unfortunate. We had Avonte Maddox out with the torn pec. I mean, we got guys dealing with Bradbury with a concussion. We're just getting unfortunate with these injuries. But yeah, I do see there's a trend. But yeah, I think with the Miami, I think it's just like, I still think Jalen Ramsey is a top 10, top 15 type of defensive back when healthy. But I think that's where right now for me is the missing piece for Miami, because I do think Miami is a potential Super Bowl contender. Now, do I think they're going to win the division? That remains to be seen, but I do think they're going to give the Bills from the run for the money. And I'm sorry, Bills fans, I still can't buy in the hype that you have built. I like Sean McDermott. I know that better than anybody because he was with us before, never really panned out. Josh Allen, depends on what you're going to get because the dude can either have a good game or a good game while still being reckless. The thing with the Bills, I even said this before the season started. The only thing that concerned me with the Bills is their defense. You have Von Miller coming off the ACL. What's DeMar Hamlin going to look like? You got guys are aging, and it's like, I don't know. But yeah, I do like what the Niners have done. Like they kept it consistent. Yes, I mean, like Steve Wilkes, I know from during his time in the NFL has not really given him a fair chance, not just as a coach, because he was obviously a lot of people remember he was a one and done with Arizona.
Yep.
Was okay with Detroit, if I remember correctly, or no, so that's Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since coming to San Francisco, it's just like, this kind of reminds me because he kind of has the same play style as D'Amico Ryans. So basically, it's like the Niners. What I will really respect is like, yeah, you lost D'Amico Ryans, but still, you never lost that consistency. Now you have a guy like Steve Wilkes who, I like what I've seen. Now it's just all depends. Can they stay healthy though? That's my main thing with the Niners because that's one of the teams in this league that's been somehow getting plagued by the injury bug on the defensive end of the football.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And especially because health definitely comes into play, especially when you got 17 weeks. You're going on with a long stretch, and you definitely want to make sure that these guys are healthy. Okay, so I want to shift over to this because I mentioned about this before. So as you know, offensive coordinating coaches clearly show that they're very innovative. They're creative. They end up showing that they have trustworthy candidates next to them that they know that they can trust situationally. Okay. I'm watching with how, Nick Sirianni worked with Philadelphia at one point last year, where they had Shane Steichen and then they had Jonathan Gannon. But then they end up having to sigh. And, Brian Johnson is, he's questionable. He's in the air. Not sure how that's really going to pan out. But still, Sirianni, as long as he produces and he stays as a game manager, the Eagles do have a fair chance. And Jalen Hurts, he's going to eventually get himself back up there. But, and I watch other coaches, Brian Dable, and several others. I have watched Brandon Staley now, and this is his third year with the Chargers. Okay. In 2 weeks, the offense has produced 50 points. Okay. And 0 turnovers. That's with Justin Herbert already throwing over 500 yards, and they're 0-2. The defense has coughed up so many points that they're right now the 4th worst scoring defense. They're the 6th worst against the rush, and they're the 3rd worst against the third downs. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I've heard this whole spiel so many times. I'm sick and tired of hearing it. When do we honestly pull the plug on Brandon Staley at this point, if I'm the Chargers?
Honestly, with the Chargers, the Chargers is an interesting case. Now, obviously, I thought Kellen Moore, I've respected the heck out of the Chargers, but like you said, I think Dean Spanos needs to stop being so goddamn cheap. And apologies, I had to pardon my French on that, but I can imagine the frustration a lot of the Chargers nation or the Chargers fan base, yourself included, could see the frustration. Like Herbert, like I said, I think he's done, let's be real, some wonders. But I still think he could be much better than what he's showing. Now, yes, I think Staley at this point, first of all, the fact that last year should have been the final straw, but the fact that the front office decided to keep him, I was like, I don't know. It's like J.C. Jackson at times can be boneheaded. Khalil Mack, I don't think he's going to be the same player as he once was in Chicago and a little bit of with Oakland. It's just like with this defense, I'm not really scared of it. But if you're in an opposition, I could imagine, like I said, 6 worst against the run. It's like, that's concerning. That is really concerning. Like I said, you can see clearly, that I don't know. The Chargers is in a very weird spot defensively. That is. It's really hard to explain where this team is headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard to say so because I just think that offensively they're very creative. Kellen Moore, you already see he's got his identity, his fingerprints all over this thing. That clearly the offense is not a problem. But if they don't fix up something soon, and this is the thing, they had Brian Dable and they had Sean Payton right in front of them. They decided not to take a chance on either of them. And Brian Dable, here's the thing, he's paying the price. He doesn't have the right quarterback in Daniel Jones, but yet he's so creative in trying to get the most juice out of this offense, and it just does not seem to clearly work with the Giants. So it's just like, if I'm the Chargers up to this point, because they're going on the road to Minnesota. If they lose this game, at this point, you got to be prepared to be pulling out the pink slip at this point, right?
I agree. Look, and the Vikings is the same thing as the same team same as the Bills. I still think they're going to be a consistent playoff contender, but it's just what concerns me is, is that that defense and that secondary doesn't really scare me. But yeah, I do think this should be the, for me, I'm the kind of fan that will say he's giving me about week 4 and then we'll see where this team stands. But in case of the Chargers, obviously give it about week 3. But if you lose to a team like Minnesota, dang, we got a problem. And the way I look at this, if Herbert and this offense can do what they've been doing with nothing changes, but you'll get more, creativity. But if the defense doesn't want to show up, J.C. Jackson still can pull boneheaded plays and crap like that. And, it's going to, Chargers fans they're not going to live it down. I'm not really going to sugarcoat it. It's time for Staley to go because, first of all, how do you even blow? First of all, look, I like the Jags. I still think there are a few pieces off, but yet you still blew a 27-0 lead when you had an opportunity to when you had a full healthy team, might I add, but still, can't get the job done. I'm sorry, but I think the front office needs to wake the hell up and actually see where the problem lies. And that's Brandon Staley. I know it does, because for me, the way I'm looking at it is, I don't want to sound like it's a scapegoat, but if our defense, like you said, it's sixth worst against the run. I think was a fourth worst scoring.
Mm-hmm.
It's something needs to change. I'm sorry, like changes need to be made immediately.
Yeah, 100%. And this is where, the Chargers, they really have to, act on it quickly before, it's too late to do so. Because again, you paid Herbert the big bucks. You already know that that's literally going to be part of those reasons that it's going to be tougher to even keep players, especially like Keenan Allen or some of them, because eventually they're going to end up getting expensive and they're already getting as old as they are, where there's not really going to be much of availability left. I do want to shift over. So I'll be talking about this later on. But I've looked at Justin Fields and I've looked at Zach Wilson.
Ugh.
Clearly, the both of them just doesn't quite translate into the NFL level. I feel bad for Justin Fields because I know that Chicago has always butchered their quarterbacks. They haven't really been able to give fair shots to their quarterbacks as much because the offensive line is iffy. And not only that, but when is the last time you ever saw, a very productive wide receiver out of this franchise? They've done nothing but care about defense. They hire a defensive coach in Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy. There's parts of it where the blame game, like when he started calling plays. So I'll shift with Justin Fields first before we go to Zach Wilson. But and now I'm hearing about, Justin Fields can't see that side of the field. So what was your thoughts upon that? And what could possibly be the best solution for Chicago to really salvage Justin Fields?
Ugh. I mean, look, I hardly ever watch Bears games, and rightfully so, because it is that's a sight for sore eyes, for a lack of a better term. And I've seen it throughout social media. Like there are times he had, I think was it DJ Moore was getting open on some really good dig routes. It's like literally, like how could you not see that? Like he's throwing into double coverage, triple coverage if that's the case. Like I said, the O-line kind of stinks. Luke Getsy, I still don't think he's a good OC. And that's for me. And look, I've criticized the Bears, not from the coaching standpoint, but also from the ownership. The McCaskies have not really done much, because I talked about this once before. Like after the 1985 Super Bowl win, as soon as Virginia McCaskey took the ownership and got everything, the Bears have not been the same since. Now, yes, you got lucky in some years with Rex Strozer, freaking people, to actually go to the Super Bowl with in 2006. Jay Cutler, you had some, I would say 2 to 3 good years out of him, but it's just like, I don't remember a consistent 1,000-yard receiver with Chicago. And I really hate to see a kid like Justin Fields fail, but if I'm Justin Fields or saying like that, I mean, I would definitely have to find my opportunities elsewhere if that's the case, because I don't think like you said, I don't think they're developing him the right way, because yes, there's always somehow like this curse behind Ohio State quarterbacks. For some reason, they just can never find success. It stinks. I would say, it stinks for the Bears fans. I mean, they had to put up with this crap the last, almost 3.5 decades, give or take. Like I said, I mean, look, there's really no positives with this team. I like Khalil Herbert, but it's just, it's not, I'm sorry, but this team, I was hoping this team could at least have somewhat an improvement season from a 3-14 last year. Honestly, I would not be surprised if they don't even get eclipsed 2-15. I think they might get worse, and it's not really saying much. And really and obviously they're playing in a wide open NFC North, and I don't know. Like it's the Bears is a weird case, because there's a lot of problems on every single part of this franchise. A historic franchise, might add. Now you have a potentially moving to Arlington Park. So, I mean, at some point, I even said this to McCaskey, fans got to have to sell the Bears, because they're not doing nothing much. Well, instead for Cooley, I know he's kind of probably losing his, probably doesn't have any more brain cells after that, the way this, but there's, like I said, there's no positives with this franchise. You won a Super Bowl, in 1985, you had Mike Ditka, Stephen Michael, speedy recovery to him. But ever since Virginia McCaskey, I've always had my skepticisms with her, because I don't think she could ever run a franchise. And unfortunately, we're seeing it really unfold after 1985. So, quite honestly, Jake, I don't really have the answer to the Bears.
Yeah. No, and I don't think either, any of our fans either, have an answer for him, because this is just right now. They're just they're just that kind of franchise. They never really have focused up on offense as much. And this is where they really have to, really make a huge pivot. They got to get out of this, this mindset of defense first, all the rest of it, because here's the funny thing. Pittsburgh, they're following up with this because even Matt Canada, not as creative as an offensive coordinator. So it's just like, when does loyalty stop? Because again, you want to be more loyal to really be creative, really build, a consistent rate on, winning games, because sometimes that definitely translates to the seriousness of how you are as a franchise. So I'll move to Zach Wilson. So again, Aaron Rodgers goes down in week 1, about 5 minutes into it. And the Jets right now kind of are in this dilemma right now because they clearly don't trust Zach Wilson. They know that he's basically been a miss for them. And clearly in this draft class, Trevor Lawrence is the only one who basically blew them all away. But is there potentially the quarterback answer? Because we know that we've seen it several times. There's been a little bit of some rumor leaks. Nobody's taking phone calls on Carson Wentz. Nobody's taking a whole lot of phone calls, but there are some conversations about potentially Kirk Cousins' name getting thrown around in the rumors. Your thoughts on that?
Like, Zach Wilson, like I say, if you go back to that draft class with Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson, when his first name got thrown around the NFL drafts, like, I'm thinking to myself, who in the hell is this kid? Like, because I remember it was like the two top prospects that were going after in terms of the quarterbacks was Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Now, the Jets, as much as I would like to laugh at them because we always have an acronym, just end the season. That's what they are. It stinks because, and yes, prior to the little 2010s, you had at least decent and out of Mark Sanchez, but not the greatest. But when you always had a quarterback problem, because when you look at the entire historical records of the Jets, the only quarterback that's held those records was Broadway Joe Namath after 1968. It's like you said it best. I mean, they've been missing on quarterbacks for years. Kirk is, sometimes I can see why. I think Zach Wilson. For me, kind of get away from Zach Wilson. The only thing I would nitpick with some of these one year quarterbacks, I think they should save at least for another year or two. Now, had Wilson stay at BOU for another year, I think we have a bit of a different conversation because he's bad. I know, I get it, he's bad, but there are times where he's shown like there's something there. But the problem is the Jets are not bringing him out. I like Robert Saleh. I think that he's really done well with that defense. But in terms of just where the offense has gone on, the quarterback's it's not really favoring me. Now, if you go after Kirk Cousins, I think I wouldn't have an issue with that because he's always been Mr. Consistency, almost 4,500 yards a year, almost 20 plus touchdowns, 20 to 30 every single year. And yes, he may not win you the big game, but he can win you games when it really needs the most. Because trust me, you're playing in a really tough AFC East with the likes of the Buffalo Bills, the New England Patriots, who I gotta give them credit where credit is due. I thought they were going to be terrible, but they were a scrappy bunch. I do think Kirk Cousins could be the answer, but I'm not seeing it like long term because I can see it stinks that you have to give up a very young quarterback that you really try to take a flash in the pan, so to speak. But yeah, the Jets. The Jets are the Jets. I'm going to leave it at that, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, of course. And I do think that, the Jets, they could use a 1-year rental, depending on how long that honestly would last. But, it just depends on the outcome. Real quick, we got 2 minutes left up on here, but I do want to shift to baseball because, of course, we're getting into the postseason now. The race is definitely on. We're getting ready for October. So far, we've already had, a couple teams clinch their divisions, and they've already clinched the postseason spot. How were you kind of respecting this postseason this year? Because again, I think a bunch of teams could definitely come out of this. The surprises, of course, the Baltimore Orioles have definitely played very good baseball. They're young, they're very innovative, and they are getting better at it. Then you got Tampa Bay that never ceases to, miss a moment at all. And that now the hard part, Wander Franco is now out. So that puts a damage into the lineup. But how do you kind of prospect, this postseason coming up? Because I know you have your show Between the Lines on Wednesdays that I know you guys are going to be getting geared up for the postseason. So what did you think of it so far?
So far, this race has been very interesting, mostly from the National League side, because with us, we're right now holding the top wild card spot. Because right now we've been watching teams like Arizona, who, man, talk about a fault from grace as quickly as they did. The Chicago Cubs is one of my surprise teams because I thought they were going to take a little bit of a step back, but I think they've been playing some solid baseball down the stretch. The Giants, I can't buy into the Giants. They've always been. And I said with the San Francisco Giants, they have not been what they once were in the 2010, 2012, and 2014. Ever since when Buster Posey retired, they have a hard time getting the catcher spot right. Because I get it. It's you got big shoes to fill. That is Buster Posey, who defined what San Francisco baseball is all about. Kapler, let's be real, a lot of Phillies fans like myself know how fluky he can be. But in look at the American League, like you said, with the Tampa Bay Rays, I don't think, look, they're going to be a good team, but I don't really see them as a World Series contender each and every year. It's like with this Moneyball, wherever they're pulling off in Tampa Bay, I like what they're doing with the development. But the problem is, at some point, it's if you can't produce a World Series championship, then what's the point? I mean, it's like, and like I said, with the thing with Wander Franco, which, sucks, but it's also disgusting at the same time with all the stuff that's come out about him. And with Baltimore, because me and Tyler, we criticized the ownership of the Baltimore Orioles as being one of the most softest owners that I've seen in Major League Baseball in quite some time. Guess the fact that he made some comments saying you want to raise ticket prices because number one, you're going to probably extend most of your future, and potentially we potentially see the debut of Jackson Holiday, who from what I've been seeing and some of the numbers, man, that kid is going to be something special for Baltimore. In Texas, Rangers fans, what the hell happened to you? I'm sorry. Like, look, Bruce Bochy, I thought was a nice, solid managerial hire. But man, holy crap, that bullpen is terrible. I think it's like when it's like I even thought about this. When you trade for Chapman, it's like, oh boy, that's not gonna go well. And well, we've seen that in probably the worst stretch that we've seen them. And obviously, we know the Yankees. Well, we all know how that really turned out. It's each and every year, always disappointing. And now you have a potential to see the Texas Rangers be whoever. I think Toronto might be climbing up. Toronto and Boston. I'm sorry, it's going to be really concerning if you're a Texas Rangers fan. I mean, granted, yes, you're over 500, but you're on the verge of getting, knocked out of the wild card race by teams like Toronto, who I still, I like what they have, but the problem is the bullpen for me is the back end, because we've seen it even last year. The back end really cost them a lot of games. First of all, I mean, look at that wild card series against Seattle. You were up 8-1 in game 2, and you're back into the bullpen completely collapsed on you. Mm-hmm. Boston, who, as sorry, but I would say, they're a roller coaster team. They'll have one good season, and there's no consistency. It's up and down, up and down. It's like, ever since, and yeah, firing Heimblum, I really would never understand that. And I will still never will, because I mean, if the ownership doesn't really care about winning, then sell the damn team. It's one of the other historic franchises in baseball. Honestly, I think Heimblum, I don't think, well, I don't know, according to Bobby, but that's besides the point. But the fact you had to trade your franchise guy in 2018, Mookie Betts, obviously playing some of the best baseball since leaving Boston. Quite honestly, it's the not Baltimore, but Boston, boy, and they have some bad contracts. Don't get me wrong. Chris Sale, boy, they overpay for a guy that can't stay healthy worth a damn. But yeah, but I think right now, the National League right now is probably the best race we've seen, because obviously the American League is kind of weak. And that's no disrespect to teams like Baltimore, Houston, it's just, I think the National League, it's been nothing but a dogfight. Obviously with Chicago, Arizona, Miami, maybe. You know, it's going to be interesting to watch. That's for certain.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting race for sure. And I can't wait for it. Postseason baseball is always my favorite time of year that I definitely would see, a lot of teams really play up to their expectations, but it'll be an interesting race all the way through. And we'll see exactly how, the race for October is going to literally look like when we're finally set in stone. But it's going to be some exciting stuff. Well, guys, as you know, Robert Lyle, you can catch him on Between the Lions podcast Wednesdays 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific here on the Sports Wave Network. Robert, always good to have you here up onto the show. Take care of yourselves, and we'll definitely see you soon.
I appreciate that, Jake.
Not a problem. Well, as you know, and like I said before, the big thing that I've always said is that Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, if they can't end up seeing the field, both of them are small guys. They throw the ball accurately. They can't they can't seem to really kind of figure it out. Oh, by the way, we do have some news from here and something that I'll definitely bring up. So, people that did not realize, so the Dolphins and the Patriots game during the whole game, there was a specific situation and a scenario that had happened in the stands. And my good friend Bobby, who actually lives up out there in the Boston area, basically mentioned here. So, some breaking news from Boston. The Massachusetts State Police, they're looking for the suspect who punched the Patriots fan, being told manslaughter charges are in play, and they'll definitely keep us up to date. Yes, please keep us up to date, because I think they said that the guy, the Patriots fan, he was in critical condition, and hopefully they do track him down, and they definitely, they're going to pay the price up on this, because again, I know football is definitely energetic, and it's definitely something that, a lot of fans, they get very excited about, but there's also some room where sometimes they kind of be a little bit of party poopers in some of these ways. So again, we don't wish any harm amongst anybody. Okay. It's NFL season. We're here to be respectful. We're here to play the game safe. And again, hopefully he'll keep us up to date, and hopefully that we'll get some positive news at some point soon. But yes, definitely a scary situation, and thoughts and prayers to the family as well. So, as you know, as we're going to be getting ready to wrap up the show, oh yeah, and for the fans to know, that Patriots fan, he died on the way to the hospital and ended up having a stroke, and this is where they really are going to find the suspect, because I hope they definitely catch him very, very quickly. So, thoughts and prayers to the family for their loss. It's sad. It is one of those unfortunate situations, but I really hope that they track this guy down and they definitely put him to justice once and for all. So, so here we go to wrap up the show. I definitely wrap up all these week 2 games as we're closing up, and these are basically my thoughts on all the games. I do believe that you could summarize every single one of them with just a few words, and it's what makes it very, very interesting, yet very entertaining. So we're going to start up with that. So, here to basically start off with, we've got Vikings, Eagles. Kirk finally showed. So here's the problem. Vikings now are 0-2. Clearly, Kirk Cousins is not the problem. He showed up in big spot. Now, the only big thing is that the Eagles, the only problem, they are right now, they're not the same offense, not as creative. And by the way, Jalen Hurts has not surpassed over 200 passing yards yet in 2 weeks. Now, it's not to say it's a possibility that couldn't happen. I'm sure that it probably will, but it is going to take some time in order for them to do so. Colts, Texans, quarterbacks in riches. So both these quarterbacks, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is in concussion protocol. He may end up missing next week due to that concussion protocol, but they're still trying to keep up to date with the news on that. But I thought both these quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud, by the way, he's the 4th most passing yards quarterback in 2 weeks so far. He's been throwing the football. By the way, next week, they're going to get John Mechie back. Houston, it's an interesting team. Kind of interested to see how things really do pan out for the Texans moving forward. But I think the Colts, they found their quarterback very, very hyperactive, and he runs the football, and he's very accurate with the football. That's a good find in Anthony Richardson. Seahawks, Lions. Hawks win late. Overtime, they were able, like this game went back and forth, but the Lions, they gave up a bunch of situational plays that they shouldn't have. And it's as I've said multiple times, this is where they have to be a shutdown defense. I think this next week they'll rebound, but the Hawks, they came out pissed off from last week's performance, and they finally came up and showed up from here. Bears, Buccaneers, fielding, not so great. Justin Fields, he just can't seem to end up finding that groove. I'm not sure that he's seeing the rest of this offense, but again, it's not looking good for the Bears. Buccaneers, by the way, Baker Mayfield has literally been playing pretty decent football. Has not really been as far as the reckless self, but he's not afraid to take a risk on some plays to make them, to be very creative and at the same time execute them the way that he's supposed to. I think the Buccaneers, they're already 2-0. That's a good surprise team, but the defense is really, really good. So I do trust how the Buccaneers may favor out for next week. Packers, Falcons, Bijan too saucy. Bijan Robinson already in 2 weeks for fantasy owners, he's already scored more than 20 points. And he's already running the football and establishing that offense under Arthur Smith. And by the way, they won late. I thought both teams really, really did play well. I thought that was an interesting game. I was watching it up on the corner of my eye, watching, the Titans and the Chargers game. But I thought that was a very, very interesting play. Bijan Robinson clearly looks like he's the front runner to being the Rookie of the Year. But I really liked his style of play. I thought it really did work out well for them. Ravens, Bengals. Oh, no, Joe. Joe Burrow, 0-2. But here's what you got to end up looking at from the positive end. The Bengals, they're 0-2 to start. Last year, Bengals were 0-2 to start at that year. But the same time, too, Joe Burrow at some point always finds his groove late. He doesn't like the first 2 games. But here's what's funny about that. Teams that go 0-3, 99% chances teams miss the playoffs. There's only been one time a team has actually made it through. There were 99 teams that went 0-3. This is back in the date of 2002. Isn't that nuts? 99 teams, and only one of them made it through that were 0-3. That's insanity. Chiefs, Jaguars, Mahomes raising the stakes. So, Patrick Mahomes, we know that not as many innovative wide receivers. They're all young. Now, we know that they may develop. Sky Moore, they're definitely asking a whole lot from, and the Chiefs, no, I don't even know what to expect from them up on offense. They've already been kind of slow up to this point. They did play pretty interestingly enough against the Detroit Lions. Hopefully that the Chiefs do come out on their own. But, you look at Sky Moore, you look at Rashee Rice, and I don't know, this is too young for me. But hopefully they can get it together and they can definitely go up on a stretch. But, it was not a good week at all for Jacksonville at all on the other side. Raiders, Bills, Buffalo raiding home. So obviously Josh Allen looked a lot more cleaned up, 38 points. He got embarrassed. He got pissed off from the previous week. He plays a lot better, and the Bills go on to win it 38-10 against the Raiders. Chargers, Titans, D looks stale-y. Chargers defense is just bad. Fourth worst scoring defense, sixth worst in rush defense, and their third worst on third down situation. Look, this should have never been a game that the Chargers had lost. They were favored in this on the road. And by the way, the Titans were coming off a game that they lost, but the defense played so damn good situationally. This is not a good look for the Chargers, and even for Brandon Staley. That defense looks too stale. They go on the road this next week and they lose to Minnesota. You have got to pull out the pink slip. I'm kind of done up to this point. Yeah, Jamar, I mean, I would honestly feel like getting rid of Brandon Staley. They should have last year against Jacksonville. This is not a good look at all. San Francisco and the Rams. Stafford giving fits. Matthew Stafford, by the way. Now, even though that the Niners won this game, but Stafford went out and made the comments that he didn't end up connecting with a lot of his young peers. But Puka Nacua and a couple of other young wide receivers. Tutu Atwell is not looking like a bust like most people thought he was. And Puka Nacua, he looked really, really good. Now, the Niners, their run game was just too much to really kind of hold. But the Rams, of course, they screwed up the points. I took the big loss upon that. Should not have happened, but I thought that was a very impressive win for the Niners. But at the same time, Rams got something very interesting cooking up. Giants, Cardinals, why so close? Obviously, they were down 20 points. It's not looking good. The juice is definitely running out for the Giants, and Daniel Jones, he just doesn't have a whole lot of trustworthy wide receivers all around this offense. And it sucks because Brian Dable, he's right now being pressurized, but it's not the coaching that's the problem. Clearly, Daniel Jones isn't the quarterback, but at the same time, he doesn't even have a lot of wide receivers to throw to. And you pay him $45 million a year. You'll have got to be able to step up at this point. Jets, Cowboys, boys taking flight. So the Cowboys, their pass rush is so lethal, it is almost hard to contain it. Like it literally is. That pass rush with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and, again, they were playing against a terrible quarterback. They played against two terrible quarterbacks, Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson. Now, they are going to be on the road the next couple of times. Okay, and they're going to face Justin Herbert. They're going to face against very competent quarterbacks. Now, I'd like to see how the defense plays against that. But I think right now this is a really good stretch. But we've seen this narrative with the Cowboys before. They're 2-0. They're in a very comfortable spot, and they've already blown out their competition with 70 points all the way around. And this is in an NFC team. Commanders, Broncos, Russ lost command. So Russell Wilson is on a lot of heat right now, and this is what's hard about the Broncos. Because Sean Payton on script, Russell Wilson plays very, very good. When he's off script, it's not good. Not good at all. And it's as I've said before, this is one of those things where the Broncos really have to, they have to shape some things up. But how about the Commanders, though? Commanders' defense looked really, really good, and they're a surprising 2-0 team. Sam Howell's making the plays that he should. And, again, whether he's not that athletic or he's not as great as a franchise quarterback looks like, but he is making the plays. And this is exactly where, Ron Rivera has to utilize a lot of that defense and make the offense work. Dolphins, Patriots, Finns swimming in New England. Finns swimming in Foxborough. So Dolphins now are 2-0. And I actually called this game that people that saw the previous, my prime predictions last week on Wednesday, called it 24-17. And sure enough, look what happened, 24-17. Crazy, I know, but here's the thing. They were coming off of an offense where they were blowing away the Chargers defense. They were not going to do the same against the Patriots, and it clearly showed. Patriots defense is good. And at the same time, Tua knows how to distribute the football. Mike McDaniel, very creative as an offensive coach, and he finds ways to bail the team out, which is what's good. Now, New England, they're 0-2 as of right now, but they have to get better on offense. I love their defense so much, but it's just like you've got to be able to let the offense translate. All right, Monday night doubleheader. Saints, Panthers, Carr in Sainthood. So Derek Carr is 2-0. He's loving his new group. And now here's the thing. This was horrible, though, all throughout, this whole Monday night. We just have Sunday night games at least, because I didn't think either of these Monday night games looked really, really good at all. I just felt like that this was just kind of atrocious play. But the Saints, hey, they walk away with a win. 3-point lead. But I thought multiple spurts that both teams did not show a whole lot of aggressiveness on either side of the field. All right, and now Browns and Steelers ship back to Canada. Matt Canada, can we just be honest that he's not that creative as an offensive coordinator? This is just flat out horrible for the Steelers. And the Steelers defense was bailing out this team all throughout it. And Kenny Pickett, they haven't surpassed. They're making 4 yards per play. What the hell is that? And this is that Matt Canada, he's playing too many dink and dunks, and we've seen this. We've seen this with Joe Lombardi. So Mike Tomlin needs to just stop being as loyal and trying to defend an offensive coordinator that just won't play that good. I love Kenny. They've got such damn good players outside of Najee Harris. I think they need to end up looking for a new running back, but this Pittsburgh defense is just too damn good. They bailed out the offense, and this is also, too, while Nick Chubb is down, and Deshaun Watson looks like he's just all over the place. So how in the hell could you end up playing in a setting like that? I never understood it, but I'd be shipping him back to Canada. Yeah, good stuff here tonight. But, again, there is, as I've said before, there's always a lot of truths that come out in the NFL, and especially when it comes to coaching. There's coordinators that need to change. There's head coaches that need to change. I don't know exactly what you got to do to make this happen, but again, I feel like that we've got such a damn good year in football this year. There's a lot of top-notch stories, but there is an awful lot of offenses that have been explosive, defenses that have been kind of holding their own. I've loved a couple of them, but next week, this was a bad week for me. 6-8, and Taylor went 7-7. But this was a bad week, but I think next week we definitely rebound, and tomorrow we definitely have week 3's prime predictions that you don't want to end up missing out on. So definitely keep yourselves up to date up on that. That's going to do it here and wrap up on the show as usual. We thank you all for joining us here on this glorious Tuesday night. Like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all latest notifications to keep you up to date on future and past shows. To all of our sponsors, Fans Idea, SeatGeek, Vital, Muscle Tech, and True Victory, we appreciate all of your guys' love and support for the show. Have a great night, and we will see you guys soon. And, of course, more coming later on with some WNBA action with the playoffs going on. You don't want to end up missing that. See you all tomorrow on the Sports Wave Network.